Hello and welcome to this video concluding our discussion on valuation methodologies. I've talked about 5 different ways that you can value a business. I've talked about price multiples as a quick and easy way of valuing a business that will give us a rough guide to a potential valuation. Then we've looked at 4 valuation models, which have been the dividend discount model, the discounted abnormal earnings model, also called the residual income model, discounted abnormal operating earnings, also called the residual operating income model, and the discounted cash flow model. So these 5 ways of valuing a business can sort of be broken up into price multiples as a quick and easy way versus these other 4 formal valuation methodologies that all use net present value techniques. They're used to value either the equity or assets of a firm. So for example, the discounted dividend model, the formula started with VE to value the equity. Why? Because dividends are paid just to equity holders. Whereas we finished with the discounted cash flow model, which is V of F, valuing the whole firm because cash flows are given both to debt holders and equity holders. So we're valuing the total asset value of the business under the discounted cash flow model, whereas the dividend discount model, dividends are only to equity holders, so we're just valuing the equity of the firm. Okay. In this conclusion video, I just want to emphasize there's no best method, but I want to talk about some of the similarities and differences between the models and why I have to show you 5 different ways of doing the same thing. So all 4 of the formal valuation methods derive from the dividend discount model. So the DDM is sort of the holy grail. It's the starting point. It's where it all began. From that dividend discount model, the residual income model, the residual operating income model, and the discounted cash flow model all were derived. So because they're all derived from the same formula, essentially they're all equivalent in some ways. So in a completely theoretical mathematical way, all 4 of these valuation models are exactly the same. However, when people apply them and people make mistakes with their application, we can often get different valuations based on these 4. So in a later topic, I'll talk about how we can try and make sure these 4 methods give us the same valuation. But in practice, most people will get different values from these 4 different models. Okay. Why is that? Because they focus on different issues, they require different levels of structure and ability and work before implementing them, and they have different implications for terminal values and how we might make those assumptions. Okay, so I've made a lot of claims about the advantages and disadvantages of the different models when I've discussed them. Those claims, I'm not just making them up, they're not my opinion, but they're generally backed up by academic research. So this paper by Penman and Sugianis looks at a comparison of dividend, cash flow, and earnings approaches to equity valuation. So they contrasted the dividend discount models, discounted cash flow analysis, and techniques based on accrual earnings, such as our residual income model. They found that valuation errors are lower using accrual earnings techniques, the residual income or the residual operating income models, rather than cash flow and dividend discounting techniques. When we use accrual accounting information, accrual accounting is designed to provide users more information than just cash flows. So it can help us with understanding the business when we're taking into account the balance sheet and the assets on the balance sheet into our valuation. Hopefully the balance sheet has some sort of basis in reality, and that helps us with our valuation. That's not included in the dividend discount or discounted cash flow models. Okay, so this paper by DeChow, Hutton, and Sloan finds that when implementing a residual income valuation model, their empirical implementation provides minor improvements over existing attempts to implement the dividend discounting model. Okay, and that's due to capitalizing short-term earnings forecast in perpetuity. So again, they found some slight evidence of the residual income model providing better valuation accuracy. And just to make sure we get both sides of the debate, this paper by Lundholm and O'Keefe looks at the different valuation models, and it says, the aim of this paper is to examine why practitioners and researchers get different estimates of equity value when they use a discounted cash flow model versus a residual income model. And they're saying that both models are derived from the same dividend discount model, so we should get the same actual answer if we do it correctly. And they argue that there's different estimates, different value estimates using these different models because people are misguided in how they're implementing these models. So we'll talk about this in a bit more detail in future weeks. When you first implement these models, you will get different valuations. Once you get a little bit more advanced, if you read through this paper and Russell Lundholm's textbook, then you can start to think about how you can actually make sure your assumptions try and make sure these models do reconcile. At this point, it's important that you understand these 4 models are all based on the same logic They come from the dividend discount model as the first model. So they're all derived from this, using the algebra from the dividend discount model. So we know they're equivalent in some way. If we do it all perfectly, we can get valuations that are the same. And that's what this paper argues, that most people just make mistakes. So it's important to understand that this professor is arguing they're all the same, and I agree with him. However, when people actually use it in practice, the mistakes are so common that the models do have these differences, and that's where the advantages and disadvantages come into play. So, what is the best valuation model? Well, there is no best valuation model. You need to understand the right tool for the job. If you're forecasting, if you're valuing a business that has negative free cash flows and negative dividends, and you're going to have to do a really long-range forecast for a dividend discount model or a discounted cash flow model, that might lead to increased inaccuracies. So maybe an earnings-based approach where you can use the balance sheet assets could help your accuracy there. However, if you're valuing a company and you really don't understand their accounting, or you're a little bit suspicious of the accounting complexity, maybe a dividend model or a discounted cash flow model might be better in that situation because it tries to remove some of those accounting distortions out of the valuation. Finally, we're going to talk about this later, but conduct sensitivity analysis. Valuation is an inaccurate science. There's a lot of estimation and guessing involved in it, so make sure you do sensitivity analysis. That's why I'm going to recommend you use multiple models when you do a valuation. See what the different valuation estimates are and see if you can reconcile why there are differences between them. Thank you very much. I hope you've gained a good understanding of the 5 different ways of valuing a business that I've covered in this course. There are others in different textbooks, and we'll talk about them a little bit in future weeks, but these are 5 of the really common ones that are a very useful skill for you to have to make sure if you want to invest, if you want to value a company, you've got a range of different tools that you can use to approach that problem. Thank you.